all of a sudden my followers went from like nothing to so many. And I think I was in the studio with Skrillex, and then that popped up, and I was almost like, I have to go.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening
I'm
right
out.
now.
I have to be in the world.
What's up, bitches? It's Jake Shears here, and I am back with another fresh serving of Queer the Music, the show that celebrates the best in LGBTQ plus talent, all for you. And today, I'm very excited because I'm meeting Sweden's darkest pop export. It is Tove Lo. She's a singular talent, a true powerhouse who balances visceral autobiographical lyrics with sort of shimmering, sexy synth pop anthems. And she's carved out a really unique space in pop music as a fearless storyteller who embraces raw, messy, and hedonistic realities of life and love. And she's just released her first new music in 2 years. It's so good. And she's about to come in right now to the Queer the Music studio, and I cannot wait to meet her. Tove Lo. Welcome to Queer the Music.
Thank you. Happy to be
doing?
here.
How you doing today?
I'm really good.
Yeah?
Release day, I'm like,
Yeah, but your first single in a couple years.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm Your Girl, right?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thanks. Let's talk about it.
Mhm.
What a killer song.
Thank you.
What a
so much.
great
Thank
song.
you. It actually was kind of a late addition to the album.
Yeah.
Me and Ludwig, I did most of the record with, Ludwig Söderberg has done like most of my songs with me since day one. I call him the other half of Tove Lo. And he and I were like, we were kind of feeling like we have so many great songs for the album. Like we have, this could be the second single, this could be the third, this could be this. But I wasn't sure I couldn't decide which should be the first song that I wanted to go with. And I kind of felt like it's missing something. It's missing that last piece that kind of ties it all together in a way, and kind of anchors where I've been to where I'm going, if that
Mm.
makes sense, like musically. So I kind of just felt like I had more to say. I don't know. So I was like, come to LA for 3 weeks, and we'll just like do one last go, like see what comes out, you know? And I'm really glad we did, because that's when we wrote I'm Your Girl, right? And it kind of started just with us for a week just kind of pulling our hair out and not figuring it out, and being sort of in that, you know, the kind of where you start to kind of overthink a little bit and get to like overanalyze
Yeah.
what you're making. I
Yeah.
feel like that happens a lot towards the end of the process, and at the start.
Yeah.
and so, but then after a while, we're like, let's just write what we want to listen to, and then
Yeah.
it kind of Ludwig kind of started with the bass line, and I kind of was like playing around with chords, and I kind of got the melody quite quickly. And then I kind of felt like the energy of the song, of the track, feels very like almost like you're on a hunt, you know? You're like, yeah, it feels very like primal and quite like energetic, like this, you know,
Well, it's
like
got
a
that
pulse.
Kill Bill sound in it too.
Yes.
The-
There's urgency
yeah.
into this. And so I've kind of wanted to contrast that with the lyrics being quite vulnerable, borderline desperate.
Yeah.
You know, like sort of showing, because I feel like the verses are quite confident and sexual, but then it's kind of comes down to like, but I'm still just a girl standing in front of a boy asking him to love her. You know, it's like that combination that I
Did you have the title in your back pocket?
No, that was very not what I was imagining for my first title, to be honest, but that's the one.
And the video is wicked. It's
Thank
gorgeous.
you,
It's
thank
so
you.
cool.
Yeah,
It-
that was a special shoot. Yeah.
Will you talk
Mhm.
about it a bit? Like the storyline of it is really interesting.
Yeah, so I think the storyline is basically me. It starts out with me in a cult. We shot it in Brazil with Nogari, this Brazilian director who I've worked with before, who is amazing. And we shot it. It's like at this abandoned monastery, like an hour outside of Sao Paulo. And it was like maybe 70 extras or dancers that were so incredible. And it starts off with me being in some kind of cult. You know, you can't really tell if it's like religious or military, but it's just like we're conforming into something. You know, it's like very like rigid square movements. Everyone dressing the same, looking the same. And what kind of happens throughout is like me and a few others sort of start to break free, and it kind of ends in just like feral chaos. And I kind of feel like the whole sort of visual story behind the album and this video is that kind of feeling of me breaking free of any kind of conformity that doesn't let me be my true self, and then
Mm.
letting my sort of inner feral cat roam free.
Amazing. But the
Yeah.
single is a prelude to this album, Estrus,
Mhm.
which comes out in September.
Mhm.
Gonna be a huge world tour. The album is amazing. I've
Thank
listened to it
you.
about 10 times
Thank
in the
you
last
so
24
much.
hours. It's so good.
You.
I think it's maybe the best thing that you've done. It's just like
I
from top to bottom,
agree.
it's
Maybe I say
so
that every album, but it feels like
it's
that
great. It's
genuinely.
just so cool. It just feels
Thank
like
you.
its own thing. You must be so thrilled.
I mean, I'm so happy with it. It took me, a bit longer than usual to
What
write
is the
this one.
usual?
I would say, I mean, I was like almost like an album every 16 months or something, but like a
Yeah.
year and a half was like the maximum almost. But I feel like it's like 4 years since Dirt Femme. I mean,
Mm,
I did do the Heat
the
EP in
heat.
between, which that did also was very cathartic for me. It just felt it was so fun. So that also kind of delayed the process a little bit, but I think it took me longer to find kind of the sonic world I wanted to be in and like what I wanted to say. It's just like, feeling like I'm still the same person and I'm always singing about my feelings and my experiences, but like I also want to give something more and something new. So kind of finding that took a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes
Years. Yeah,
years, but
something
I mean,
takes
it
years.
still seems.
Yeah.
I still feel like just 2 years since Heat still feels like
Yeah. It's not that
a nice
long. I'm like, I've
turnaround.
been gone
Yeah.
forever. Let's go.
And it's the second album you've released on Pretty Sweet,
Mm-hmm.
your label.
Yeah.
And what does it feel like to be sort of your own boss after being like what's the deal with the majors now?
I mean,
You've got like a distribution deal?
yeah, I have a
Yeah.
distribution deal. And I think, I don't know, but even if, here's the thing, I had a really good experience at a major label. It was more like the reality of, okay, I want to do this. And they go, we don't really get that. We don't know how we can market that. It's like they're also selling, they're trying to sell as many products as they can, right? So if you decide to go a little bit, if you decide to go left and not stay, in the sort of commercial lane that they're hoping you'll be in, it kind of, at least I felt that like I understand why um they found it tricky, like, it kind of becomes like I'm doing this no matter what. And they're like, well, I was at least lucky that they weren't like stopping my releases or anything. They were kind of just like, all right, well, do you. We just don't know what to do with you, but you can do you, if
Yeah,
that makes
yeah, yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So it's more about being independent. I feel like I just get to do whatever I want, and there's never any discussion. It's more like, all right, cool, we'll do what you want,
Yeah.
and without sort of um I don't know. I just feel more in control, and that I just feel very free, doing it that way. And I can decide which direction I want to take, and that is just lovely.
Great.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go back to like high school,
Mhm.
in Sweden.
Oh, yeah.
You're in the suburbs outside of Stockholm. What were you like as a teenager?
I was very angsty. I think I felt like I was constantly trying to find where I belonged, Yeah, I was struggling with depression on and off. I was struggling with eating disorders on and off until I like properly found music. I didn't have an outlet for all of that. You know what I mean? Like whatever was giving me these kind of, there was like all my feelings were in a pressure cooker and I couldn't let them out anywhere. So I think there was a lot of just like highs and lows
And
constantly.
what was that first music that you heard? There's always that moment in our youth, right? That
Yeah.
like you suddenly are like, "Oh my God, this."
Yeah.
What was that for you?
For me, it was Hole and Silverchair and Nirvana were the
Mm.
first like ones that really like made me like, oh, I can feel like this. It's okay. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What were your first ones? Do you?
It was
Was
like
it?
it was Bowie.
Yeah.
Bowie.
Yeah.
Finding
Nice.
Bowie,
Hmm.
was the first thing. And then like when Rocky Horror sort of came into my view,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was like the next thing.
Yeah. Like world creators too. I feel like they, build
Yeah.
universes for you to enter, which is really
It makes your imagination
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
But do you remember your first awareness of like Swedish songwriting culture?
Yeah. I think, well, the industry of it, I didn't really see or understand until I got signed as a writer at Warner Chappell, like early on. Or not early on in my life. I was like, I think 24. So it was like a long time after high school where I was just like, I believe in me. Someone else will, hopefully, someday soon. Um, but I think when I went to this high school in Sweden. It's like it's a public music school. So you get in based off your audition and your grades. It's called Rytmus. And I remember applying, my parents like letting me apply, thinking like, she's not gonna get in. She's not that good. And then I got in, and they were like, okay, we're worried now, but she's so happy we cannot say no. Like she has to go to that school. So when I was there, I like auditioned just as a singer, but there was also a like you could also choose like a songwriter program. So I met a few songwriters there, and I was kind of like, oh, you write songs. I realized how little I knew about just music. I couldn't really pick out what instruments were playing in a song. I remember we had to do these like lunch concerts, and I would do them acoustic for the first 6 months because I was so terrified to ask musicians to play with me. And then I didn't, they were like, but there's no guitar in the song. And I'm like, oh my God, I asked the guitarist to play with me and there's no guitar. Like, it's so embarrassing. So I did like first like 6 months just like the only acoustic songs I could find, and like, and then my song teacher was like, or my vocal coach, she was like, hey, are you struggling a little bit with the, asking musicians to play with you? And I was like, yeah, I don't really know. And then she helped me kind of figure that out. And then that kind of, this sparked the interest in like songwriting and figuring out how to play an instrument and be kind of the musician side of things, not just the performer side. And I think so that during high school, I was like trying to write songs and I could tell I wasn't very good, but I like kept pushing and kept doing it and like asked for a lot of feedback from people, which in Sweden that was weird. It's like you don't tell people what you think like that. Like
Really?
it's that's kind of awkward.
Really?
Yeah. So but it took a long time until I was like in sort of as it just took years of me like trying and failing at writing and then just keep getting better and better just from like paying attention and listening to songs and be like, what do I like about this song? And yeah.
What
And
was the
then
first what was that first moment where you're like, "Oh my God, I think I just wrote something really good."
I think it was actually I put out that song. It's a song called Love Ballad that I wrote, like one of my first ever releases that I put out independently before I had a album deal. And I remember it was also like my own production and everything. And it was when I think I'd written that, and then I played, I convinced some of my friends who like were like running clubs in Stockholm and stuff, like, can I play, like at your club? And they're like, all right, fine, a little bit. But I remember when I played that song, that was the one that people actually like probably cheer to.
Mm.
The other ones was kind of a bit like,
Yeah.
you know. And so that song was, I remember feeling like that chorus seemed to really like, that did something to people. And
Mm.
so, yeah. And then I remember, and that gave me confidence to like, try again and try again. And yeah.
And then when did you become aware when you got signed like of the industry that's there?
I think it was, I think, yeah, getting signed to Warner Chappell, Sweden's small. There's
And
like,
how old were you?
I was 24, I
Mm.
think. Yeah, 24. And I think I was like, I got signed. I like met Ludwig, like my main man, like so early on. And he helped me then reproduce and work on Love Ballad and like him and this guy Jacob who were a producer duo at the time. And I kind of started to realize that they were like, I'm like, oh, everyone here is like working on songs. And it was kind of all the producers that are also now signed to MXM as Wolf Cousins. We have this writer collective that's signed to Max Martin and Shellback. And those guys were all there at the beginning, like everyone just kind of writing and producing for other people, trying to sort of make that happen. And then I didn't understand that much then either, that like, oh, not all artists write their own songs. Like everything was so fresh to me that it was like, and that we're sitting here making music and like sending them in the hope that like maybe this artist would want to do it. And that I got thrown into very quickly. As soon as I was signed, it was like, do you want to write for other people? I'm like, yes, I want to do that. I don't want to be, at the time, I think I was also a bit like, I don't even need to be an artist. I just want to make music. Like as long as I can make music all day, like life is amazing. And that was I think it was like a couple years that I was just doing so many sessions for other people, really getting thrown into the fire. Wrote a lot of terrible songs and then some great ones. And
Talk about like at the time as far as session writing there, what was it like in that moment? Like just for our listeners to like, what is session writing like? It's something that's not
exactly.
necessarily always talked about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know the difference, like when you write with a band, like we all write for the same goal together in this room as like as a band or as a group. I think that's very different to when you are in a room with like, you've been put together almost by the label or by the publishers. Basically where like, okay, let's say this artist is looking for a song. And if you're lucky, you can get in the room with that artist, but it could be with a producer you've never met, and it can be with you've never met the artist, and it can be like another writer that you've never met. And then there's 4 of you in a room who've never met each other. And you're just supposed to write something deep and meaningful and catchy. And I feel like it's a little bit like speed dating.
Mm.
I think when I walk into a room as the writer and to like help another artist to like, you know, do their vision, I try to kind of get something personal out of them without sounding manipulative. It's very just like, how do we connect? Like, I want to connect to
Mm.
you. And you can kind of sense really quickly if someone's open to sharing something personal about themselves in the room or in the song. Like that can really vary. But at least then I'll share something really personal about myself and be like, I'm going through this right now. How does that make you feel? Kinda.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a good way to sort of, because I do think you need to get deep into the emotions if you're going to write something that means something, whether it's like a dance, dancey fun track or not. Like it needs to come from somewhere real.
It's
I
such an
don't know. Yeah.
interesting, unique thing to end up
Right?
in a room with people that you don't know,
Yeah.
and you suddenly have to make something
Yeah.
together.
And especially if you don't click as people, it can be so draining. And if you feel like
Or dry.
you're so dry, you're like, no one's laughing. Okay, never mind. My sense of humor is not appreciated. Let's move on. And I feel like, and sometimes too, like in LA especially, I feel like, there's kind of that wheel. It's very like fast moving and they're not really interested unless it's like, we're going for like the first single. There's a very like competitive, sort of harsh vibe there, I think.
So you ended up talk about how
Yeah.
your move to LA,
Yeah.
and then I want to talk about sessions there. So like, you ended up
Mm.
going to LA when you were how old?
I think this is yeah, this is kind of a crazy story. I get signed to Warner Chappell in Sweden. My A&R, who signed me, gets fired 2 weeks later. So the person who's like in my corner is not there.
Mm.
So then I meet with my the guy who's still my like main publisher to this day, the only person I send songs to for feedback very early on in the process. He just gets I get handed to him basically, like, and so we meet and he's like, I will say I'm very curious about what you're doing, but I don't know if I don't think you're not an experienced songwriter yet. And I was like, no, I've done 2 songwriting sessions with Ludwig and Jacob, who then ended up doing so much of my music that I worked with for a long time. But he was like, do some more sessions just with the guys here in the studio, like here that you know and that you worked with before. And then we'll see when we're kind of ready to send you out into like the world, to go to London or LA to write. But then I end up at a birthday party with this writer and producer is called Alexander Kronlund. Worked a lot with Max Martin. Super charismatic, super talented. He's very like vibe based, I would say. Like at least he was then in terms of like who you would want to write with. He has a birthday party. I go to this birthday party. It was kind of like a mix of a lot of people in the industry and then his friends and just like I'm like, I guess I'm going. I don't know him, but I'm going. And I end up on stage just like kind of singing with the band playing. I'm not really sure how. I think I just went up there and just grabbed the
Yeah.
mic because it's kind of my thing. And then he was like, I love your voice. Like, who are you? What are you doing here? Kind of, you're at my birthday party. Who are you? And then he finds out that I'm, signed to the same publisher as him. And then he kind of asked that he wants me to come to LA to write with him. And this was maybe 2 weeks after I got signed. And then, Julius got to take me. It was all happening very fast. And then Julius kind of says like, okay, we're going to send you to LA, but I don't think you're quite ready, but let's just try it. Like if he's inspired to write with you and, just go for it. And I somehow and at the time I had no driver's license. There was no Uber in LA. So like getting around to, LA is very spread out, very big. So
What
getting
year was it?
It must have been 2010 or 11,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, 2010 I think it was. Yeah. And I was just like, I somehow, I go there, I work with him. I'm staying at the Saharan Motor Inn, like on Sunset and Vine. Like, not,
Yeah.
no, I had no money.
Yeah.
Warren Chappell wasn't like throwing money my way, to like pay for some fancy hotel. So I was very much like, and I found this one taxi driver who was like, if you only call me and give me and pay me in cash, I'll always come get you. It might just take me a while.
Mm.
So I would run around to a bunch of different sessions and then do the session, then call him, kind of sit outside the house, hiding and waiting sometimes for an hour and a half for him to come get me and take me places.
Wow.
But then I remember feeling getting to LA, I was like, oh, this is a machine. Like the songwriting process and the sessions and the competitiveness was so much more.
The sessions were different.
Yes, very different. It was just Sweden has, obviously there's so many incredible writers and very People are very talented in it, but and still there's more of a softness in the room
A little more
compared to
nurturing,
yeah,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah. Or maybe it was just like, I was writing with people in Sweden that were kind of in the same position as me. We were all new, we were all just trying things. And then I got to LA and got maybe to kind of early on go into like rooms with more experienced writers who were kind of like, what are you doing here? Prove yourself,
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I did that trip, but I did learn a lot.
Yeah. And so you went back and forth for a while and then moved
Yes.
and then you're
Yeah.
in LA. What's
Mm,
the session scene like there now? How does it feel?
I mean, I feel like I'm very outside of it because I rarely work. It's rare for me to go into a room with people I don't know
Mhm.
now. I usually work. I have so many amazing producers and writers now that I love writing with. So I prefer, if I'm writing for other artists, I prefer to go into a room with someone that I know.
Yeah.
Because I also do feel like when I go into a completely new room, sometimes you're lucky and you meet someone great, like that you
Mhm.
really vibe with, but it's rare that you actually get, because it's also that thing of like you have to be able to be really honest. I feel like, in a session and say what you think, and that's really hard when you don't know each other that well. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and everyone always goes like, "I'm so down with honesty. Like, let's just be real. Like, no need to sugarcoat it." And then when I then am honest, I can, the vibe switches
Yeah.
very fast.
Oh my God. So when was that moment that you were like, actually, I want to be an artist. I want to not just be writing songs. I want to.
I think when I wrote Habits,
Yeah.
I'd had the verse. I had the verse and like this. I had that, like, for so many years. It was like a s I'd but I'd tried to write a chorus to it with so many different people for, like, 3 years maybe before I finally landed on, like, the one that's there now, when I think it was when I kind of realized, like, "Oh, it's a heartbreak song. It's not like a, eh," but,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not a rebellion song, it's like a heartbreak song. And once I kind of that clocked in me. I was like, "Oh," and then it kinda, just happened. But I think when I'd written that, I was like, I sent it to my team, and they were like, "Wow, this is," and he's like, "Are you gonna, like, pitch this one?" I was like, "Nope. This one's coming out as me. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but this one needs to exist in the world as my song,"
You suddenly felt ready.
Yeah. And it wasn't like a big, like, "Okay, I'm gonna put everything I have into my artist project." It was like, "Okay, my main thing is gonna be writing for other people." 'Cause I love that, and I can sense that that's, like, I'm good at it. It feels like a good that just feels like a good home for me to be, but I would love to have just, like, an outlet on the side that's, like, exactly how I would do it if it was me, you know?
Mm.
So I'm like, I'm just gonna have that as, like, my side project, and then it kinda, it shifted.
Hmm.
But, yeah, it was crazy when it, like, did happen, that it was so quite immediate with that song.
Do you feel that that could even happen now?
I mean, it seems to be able to, I feel like there's no rules anymore. There's like all you can do is put the best you got forward, and then either people resonate or they don't. I mean, that's kind of maybe always been true. But I do love the fact that, like, I mean, even for me now with Habits, it's like it's a song that changed my life, and it keeps popping back up. Like, people keep resonating with it, and like new people find it, and it's just like it's having the longest life.
Yeah. What was your first moment you remember after putting that song out and you're like, oh shit?
I think it was because I put it out independently first, so it kind of feels full circle that I'm
Hmm.
independent now again, to be honest. And I think it was, I was about to go to my second, like, big LA writing trip, and back then, you'd go in and meet with A&Rs, and they would tell you about artists looking for songs, play kind of the sound they were gonna do, and then you would kind of go write with people and then bring back demos and be like, "I thought maybe this." Um, and I hadn't played any of those, like, A&Rs, any of my stuff by that point, but so I put out Habits. It was getting, like, attention on the kind of, like, cool music blogs, and, like, Pitchfork wrote about it, or so, it was kind of buzzing a little bit. And when I went into all these A&R meetings, they're like, "Why have you not played me your stuff? This is like, what the fuck is this?" But then I remember when I think it was Marina the Diamonds who tweeted about it first, and I obviously was, like, floored, huge fan of hers, and I was
Mm.
just like, "What?" And then, I think when Lord then also tweeted about it, that was when I was like, "Oh my god, like,
Yeah.
it is happening now," you know?
How did that feel getting supported by other
I mean,
artists?
amazing. It was so shocking and cool and just, like, I felt like the power of the internet, you know. Um, and so I remember, I think I was actually in London when I saw that Lord tweeted about it, because like all of a sudden my followers went from like nothing to so many. And I think I was in the studio with Skrillex. I have no idea what we were doing, but I was there. And then, oh, was it Skrillex? I was in the studio with someone. And then that popped up, and I was almost like, I have to go.
Yeah, it's happening.
It's happening.
It's happening
I'm
right
out.
now.
I have to be in the world. Yeah.
And your lyrics, your image, they're not necessarily always, it's not always shiny and glam.
No.
It's I use the word mealy and visceral sometimes,
Yeah, I love that.
and like kind of funny and sometimes gross. Like, where does
Good.
that come from?
I feel like I think maybe because I grew up in like a very clean, sort of nice, put together suburb outside of Stockholm in Sweden. But I think I was always drawn to like more grit and dirt and like things not being so perfect and like being messy. I don't know. I've always just had a love for it. Like, and I think it's what my therapists have told me all throughout my life, that I'm always like in between these two people, like the kind of perfect, like, um, you know, top grades, doing everything right, kind of put together person, and this like very messy, destructive, kind of like want to blow up everything person. Like I'm always like running between them. It's like, and I have to find a better balance between them. And
You feel like you found it.
no. I'm never gonna. I'm now. I found balance in that I'm never gonna find balance.
Yeah.
It kind of just feels like it's for me, because I cherish those moments of wild so much. I don't think I really want to find it. I find so much creativity there. I don't know. What do you feel like, if you're in a balanced place, that's when you're at your best in terms of like creativity?
I'm a
Or do you
Libra, so
feel
I'm super like I do, balance is super
Yeah.
super important for me.
That's when you thrive in the
It's
like
always
yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
I'm 47. I'm gonna be
Mhm.
50 in a couple years, and it's just like I definitely feel major things like
Mhm.
shifting.
Yeah.
You
I feel like I'm
know?
in a shift right now. I'm a 38, so I'm gonna turn 40 soon. And I feel that too, and I'm like, something is happening, but I don't know what it is. And I think that's like, and it's like, it's affecting my creativity, but in a good way, I think, right
Yeah.
now. But I
Yeah.
am like, I have this weird feeling like for the first time I don't know where I'm headed, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
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 It's funny, even just you mentioning like playing Feel It tomorrow night, and I'm
Mhm.
like, "Oh, there's an excuse to go because I can't go now on my own
Yeah.
anymore." You know what I
Unless
mean?
there's like a
I have
yeah.
I have a boyfriend and a
Yeah.
dog, and I'm almost 50, and it's like you know what I mean? It's like I
Yeah.
need sort of an excuse to like
I feel like,
to show up.
I hear what you're saying. I'm still just so deep in the club. I'm
Yeah.
forever gonna be on the dance floor, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
I
gonna be that lady in Studio 54 who kind of, in the movie, who like dies really tragically on the dance floor, but I'm kind of low-key hoping that's me.
love it. We talk about like just your writing process. I know that like
Mhm.
writing songs, it changes all the time. You said you like to know the mood of a song, which I love,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I sort of identify with that. Like,
Yeah.
how do you set a scene sometimes?
I feel there's always like some kind of feeling or some sentence floating around inside me that I'm trying to grasp, when I go into the room. And then it's like sometimes, I feel that the producer I'm working with would just kind of sit and look at me and try to read it, and they're just like doing chords or beats and just like checking my facial expression and trying to figure out where like what I'm, and I'm sitting there like, I don't know, yeah, maybe. It's kind of a very sort of like loose, just trying to find a vibe for a long time sometimes. And then once it's like they can hit a chord, then I'm like, "Oh, that's it." And
Yep.
then the sentence just kinda comes, and
Yep.
it might not be the sentence of the hook, but it's just like, this is where the story starts kinda thing.
Mhm.
And then from there, I will try and, like, explain to them in very non-technical, very just feeling, all the feeling words I can, like, where I want the track to go. And then I feel like melody and lyrics do have to come kind of simultaneously for me. I can tweak it, but I have a hard time knowing if I think a melody is good unless I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like, are you melody first, or like
It's
varies?
all
Yeah.
over the place. It's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
sometimes it's really hard to have like a great melody, and
Yeah.
then you're like, I don't know what that's supposed
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah. And then I think all words sound dumb on that melody, and then I just get
Yeah.
like, yeah, and it's like, and then I feel like they don't have. It's like even if I'm like I want it to be simple, blah, blah, but then the simple just feels like really, ugh, it's tricky.
D
Mm,
does it have to feel right coming out of your mouth? Do you sing a
mm.
line sometimes you're like, "That doesn't feel right at
Yeah, yeah,
all."
for sure. And it's like, kind of when I don't know, but when I've been sent, it's rare, but when I get sent pitch songs, like people pitching songs to me to
Mhm.
sing, I'm like, I would never say that. And they're like, that's not how I would say it, even though I would say that exact same thing, but just in a slightly different way. But to me, it's so sensitive in terms like how I would talk or like how I would phrase it, whatever. And I think so that's very like clear to me when I'm writing that it's so it's like only I can know
Yeah, I mean,
almost.
that's why I feel like 2, like, lyricist top liners are
Mhm.
almost, like, hard to be in the same, especially
Yeah.
if it's a song for one of them,
Yeah.
it can sometimes cross cancel each other out,
Yeah,
can't
it
it?
can be I've had a few sessions from being like, "Oh, this is really lyrically we're just like riffing off each other." And it's been when I've worked with Luca Closer and Elvira Andefjärd, who these two writers and producers are amazing. They did the whole Addison Rae album. And also Tove Burman, another Tove, who we worked together for my record as well. And with them, it's just like I'll write something and then they're like, "Well, what about this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's so much better." Yes.
Mm,
And and
mhm,
also like I would say it
mhm.
that way. I would phrase it that way. Like I feel like we really like riff off each other lyrically. And also with Kim Petras, we also had a great session where I felt like we were just like, yeah, killing it with each other's lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost like too, it's just writing alone's not very fun, is it?
No, I want to work with people. I want someone's opinion back at me. I don't like the sort of, sometimes you do sessions and it's like separate. You have the person making the beats, one's making the chords, one's making the melody, and one's making the lyrics. And it's almost like everyone stays in their lane in a strange way. I've never been good at that.
Mm. You need sounding
Uh,
boards.
yeah.
You tackle subjects, sexual subjects, addiction, you're very vulnerable in your
Uh,
songwriting, like, what has that always been there like that since you started writing?
I think I've always written a lot of journals and always like had, and I could tell. Actually, found I was, I was in Stockholm last week and I couldn't sleep one night, so I just started cleaning out my whole apartment. Still have my like one bedroom apartment there, and I found like my journals from when I'm like 14 to like
Mm.
20, 24, 25 to when I moved away from Stockholm. And just reading that, I was like, "Oh god, this
What
this
did you
girl."
see?
First I was like, "Oh, what an idiot." A lot of the time, but then also like, "Oh, if I just like, oh, just the struggle that I was having internally with myself was so like the frustrations I was feeling with myself was so strong. I think I could tell there was a difference when I was just writing about what was happening in life. Like me and my friends went here and then we did this, to when I was starting to use it as an emotional outlet. And then from there it goes emotional outlet, just like what I was going through emotionally every day to song lyrics. So I feel like it goes from, and then from when I started writing songs, it's a lot less of me writing just train of thought and way more lyrics that's like taken over for like the journaling basically.
Mm.
So I think once I realized that it was giving me so much to put that out on paper. It's always been very much that like I write almost like from like a journal perspective in my songs. Yeah.
In your videos and watching you perform, I think it's really amazing, like, your movement's incredible,
Thank
and it's
you.
it's
I've
so
worked on
what's so
it.
also just amazing to see how connected you are with your body,
Thank you. Yeah.
but I
It
don't think
took some
it
time.
wasn't always like that. Can you talk about your
Yeah,
journey with that?
me and my body, we've had a journey,
Yeah.
like so many people. I feel like, and probably a lot of performers too. But I think I used to hate it with a passion growing up, and then I remember I've only written really one song about it, which is crazy considering how much I think I find it quite hard to write about. And I did
Mm.
on Dirt Femme, I did a song called Grapefruit that was like finally kind of like admitting to struggling with bulimia for a very long time. And I remember what saved me, like, in like a kind of romantic way was music. Like, I was having issues with my voice. I went to a vocal doctor and he was like, if you don't stop, he's like, I can tell you're bulimic. I see it in your throat, basically. Like, I can tell this is ruining your voice. And he's like, if you want to, he's like, you can keep doing what you're doing, but you're not gonna be able to sing for much longer. Like you're gonna ruin your voice. And I left there being like, what am I doing? I'm mistreating my body. I'm alienating my friends and family. I'm like, now I'm like getting rid of the only thing that's making me happy, you know? And from that day, I wasn't immediately cured, but I started properly like taking the therapy seriously. I made the effort to like do the work it takes to kind of get well. And I think, and then the journey of like, you know, be happy this is all working and is still healthy and like, and like the possibilities you have with your body kind of thing. Just be grateful and like appreciative and just also be kind to yourself. Kind of that journey kind of started. And I think I'd been recovered for a while when I then started to get, the spotlights on me. And I'm very happy that I wasn't still struggling with it when I became, a bit famous, because that would have been really hard, I think. And then I think all that like work on like so much like body positivity actually made me love my body. So
Mm.
maybe more than if I hadn't struggled with that disorder,
Mm.
So I think, and then being on stage and kind of, feeling so powerful and like feeling that sort of, the power and energy I get from performing, and then being like, oh, but there's so much more I can say so much more with my body than what I'm doing right now. And then I started working with someone named is Tuggy, who's an incredible choreographer and movement coach. She really like, I don't know what it is, but when I dance with her, I I just feel my confidence goes up so high. Like I just feel that there's not like an angle of me that I think is bad. You know what I mean?
Mm.
There's something about just the power of knowing my body, being comfortable in my body, and knowing how to move it. That is so. It's like I feel almost like more proud of that than singing. Do you know what I mean? And I actually am mad at myself for not, because it is naturally in me, that I didn't like push myself harder to do like to move and dance more when I was younger. Like I think if I wasn't so self-conscious about my body when I was younger, I probably would have, because it's just gives me so much like joy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Said
Yeah.
flashing on stage and
Yeah.
being very revealing, no retouching photos, and trying to keep my body real has been a secret victory for me.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Did you ever get any pushback from the majors at all about like retouching photos or image stuff? They ever trying to like
I think maybe a little bit early on. It was more just like people were so unused to it that I was like, no, no, like leave my love handle in, like
yeah.
let it come back, like bring it back. I think when I started, I think it was a little bit like, you sure? Like doesn't look like it's supposed to look, a little bit like that. But quite quickly, I also think I was part of the wave of like a lot of body positivity at that time. So I think in a good way it was like it started to during that time not be okay to like call women out and comment on women's bodies the way that
Mm-hmm.
it used to be okay.
Mm.
So I think that also helped in terms of like no one really daring to tell me like, no, but it looks bad. We should get rid of it.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was like, well, if she's
exactly.
happy, I guess, like that. And
Yeah.
and I think it just also for me, if I wasn't, it's like I just have to accept myself. You know what I mean? It's like it's there's no point in trying to hide. I don't know.
Your attitude to sex and queerness has been present from the get-go.
Yeah.
And from Habits through Bad as the Boys, the video for Heat,
Yeah.
which is such kind of an ode to queer
Yeah.
club
It
life.
was such a fun shoot. Yeah.
Um,
Loved it.
how important has it been to sort of represent all aspects of your sexuality?
I actually It's become so important, and I think I didn't realize how important it was for my fans especially until like I started talking openly about like, yeah, I'm bi or I'm pan, like what's the big deal? Kind of like that. Because I think for me, I grew up in such an accepting environment. Like, I never had to like come out to my parents really. I was just like, sometimes there was a girl,
Yeah.
it wasn't that big of a deal. And I think, when I didn't realize what a statement it would be making out with girls in my video. It was just kind of like day.
make it look really
yeah,
fun.
yes, it was so fun. And it was just like, yeah, and I think for me it was so, I came at it with quite a lighthearted attitude, and I think I'm hoping that was kind of inspiring and made a lot of queer people feel accepted and be like, okay, this is a safe space. Like she's a safe space for us to be around, kind of thing. And so I'm happy that I love being very open about it and talking about it. And I think even though I've been with a man now for a long time, like being queer is still very much part of my identity. It's not something that just disappears. So I feel like, yeah, it's just such a beautiful community. I've had like, and just for example, the Heat shoot was like one of the most fun shoots I've ever been on. It was so sweaty and fun, and the energy was just so unmatched. Like it just
Sexy.
sexy, really sexy.
Really sexy.
Yeah.
Really I love fancy
Yeah.
shoes in that video too.
Yes, yes.
She looks so great with
Yes.
her. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Do you
with
think with those big balloon
yeah,
gazungas?
it's just incredible, cast, like a royal cast. I feel like,
Mm.
it was incredible.
Was there?
Mm.
Do you think growing up like in Sweden, it felt very sort of open? Your sexuality was a little more open. Like, what was
Yeah, I would
sexual
say,
culture like?
I mean, I think Sweden is, I would say there's definitely, the bigger the city, the more acceptance. I think that's kind of if you're kind of in smaller towns, it might not be, maybe it's not as open. But I think I just remember feeling like, compared to Sweden, when I came to the US at least, I felt a big difference in, like, I didn't realize that being like bi was going to be political, if that makes sense. Like like I was all of a sudden a political artist talking about my sexuality. I think that was a big difference from Sweden, to like the biggest like culture shock for me a little bit.
Mm.
So, and also I think my thing is also just my parents have been very open-minded, and very, I mean, I freak them out a lot of the time, but they're just like, couldn't care less.
Who would you say your longtime musical influences are? And then who would you say like what influences for now? Like
Mm.
long term, short term.
I mean, long term, like forever and always going to be Robin. I mean, I want to talk about some of the artists that kind of really inspired this last album. Was a lot of the artists that I listened to when I was having my big artist dreams, and it's always been Robin, and also the Knife, the Cardigans, Nikki and the Dove, Licky Lee. Love her new album, by the way, so exciting. And then also this band called Cape Boy, that I knew some of the people in the band. They put this album out in 2015 that I was like obsessed with. Some of the coolest productions I've heard to this day. And they just put out new music just now again, and I'm so excited for there
But
to
where are
be
they
more.
from?
Sweden, and the singer, I think she's like Australian, but has lived in Sweden for a long time. So it's mostly a Swedish band, but yeah, they're amazing.
I'm sure that you've probably crossed paths with Robin
Yes,
many
we met a
times.
few
I'm sure.
times, and now I'm like cool and normal around her. Like in the beginning, I could barely. I was like so just like smiling, like, oh my god, it's you. She's so
Freaking
lovely and
out.
cool. So like yeah,
That's how
I was being the weird one.
That's how I get around Beck.
Yeah, yes,
Whenever
I can see.
I just turn into
Yeah.
like a true idiot. My boyfriend was like,
Yeah.
"What's
But
happened
his
to
aura
you?"
is like so strong too. Like he's so cool,
I
like so
can't
nice.
handle
But
it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
literally can't handle it.
And I
It's
feel,
so embarrassing.
yes, because I can feel myself. I'm like, you're not
Uh,
being chill right now. Can you stop? Like, and I'm like, I feel like I'm good at just like, I'm good at meeting my heroes. But in that, yeah, with her in the beginning, I was like, huh.
Oh God, it's
I was
so. It's
how many times have you
it's
met Beck? Is it like
like
a
4 times, and
yeah?
every single time I'm like, like it's.
What do I say? What do I
My
say?
boyfriend was with me last time. He was like, "Who are what?"
Like, when you made that song,
Yeah.
and then you're like, wait, I can't remember it now.
Oh
Wait.
no, it's so embarrassing.
Yeah,
I'm literally
yeah.
tearing up. It's so embarrassing. At least we still get excited.
Exactly. No, I think that's important. I love that I'm not jaded in like any way. Everything is
Yeah.
so exciting still for me.
Well, I'm sure you're gonna be, super excited this summer with this brand new album out.
Yes.
Estrus in September.
Yes.
And a big tour. And
I can't wait.
I think you've done such an amazing job on the album.
Thank you. That
Massive
means so much to me.
congrats.
I'm a huge fan of yours, so this is kind of crazy.
Thank you. And yeah, best of luck with the record, and thank you so much for joining us on Queer the Music.
Of course. Love it. Thank you so much.
That was Tova Lo. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Loved talking to her, and can't wait for this record to come out. You are going to love it. That's it for today's episode of Queer the Music. Please follow us on Instagram at Queer the Music Podcast and send us messages of your questions and concerns or requests. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, keep it queer.